Welcome to another episode of the Wholesale Elite Podcast. I am Isham and I'm here with my main man, Tanner Santucci. How are you, sir?
I'm great. Great. It's been a good week.
Absolutely indeed. It is Friday today, and we are joined by none other than Mr. Benson Juarez from Privy. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Super stoked
Good.
to be here with you guys. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for
Man,
being here.
we're excited to have you guys. This is going to be a different one. Usually we have we've invited wholesalers who are just crushing it in the market, or maybe brand new and just have done a couple deals and to get their perspective. But today, this is going to be a neat one. I was slightly reserved with doing this podcast, and it's only because this incredible tool that we're going to talk about today is kind of something I've been wanting to keep to myself. But that's that scarcity mindset, and we've got to get rid of that. But I think the cat's out of the bag now with Privy, and most people know about this incredible software. And so we're going to dive in a little bit into Benson's story and his background, because I know many of you that are familiar with Privy have probably seen Benson or heard his voice and his, surely have heard his name. But you guys may not know the investor that lies inside of Benson. It's something we recently found out about. So we're going to find out a little bit more about Benson's story, and then we're going to segue on to talking about Privy and what this tool can do for all the listeners and viewers. And so, Benson, I would absolutely love for you to just get started telling us a little bit about your background and kind of how you got into real estate.
For sure. I think since I was little, and this everyone's got their story about how they started off like grinding and doing their entrepreneurial activities, and I had a similar experience. I didn't come from a family where people had anything having to do with like side hustling or making money on the side. My dad was a police officer for 33 years. My mom worked at a bank for 30 years. And so I didn't have any of that kind of entrepreneurial blood as far as I know. Unless I was adopted, which is entirely possible, but I still think that I'm from the two parents that I think I came from. But I just always was like when I was little, I'd go to the grocery store and I'd buy a 10 pack of bubble gum, and I'd sell them for like $2 per pack kind of thing, and I was just doing that early on, and it was just something I did. And then, when I was like 12, I got a paper out, right? And I went and slung, newspapers for 3 or 4 years. And then toward the end of that, I was like, man, I can go drive cars over at the lot up the street and grind and make money there. And then I got a job at a cashier at Waterworld. And then like one summer I had like 4 hustles. I was just doing this, and it's just what I did. Right. And then once I got into college, um, there was like I started getting involved in like nutrition and like working out and weightlifting, and all there was at the time was GNC, right? And so
Hmm.
I met a guy who like had some proteins and some creatines, and it was like from another city, and I'm like, I'm gonna start selling this stuff. So I started selling it on campus, and I literally had a pager, and I would go around to all the fraternities and just with like a big basket of stuff, and I would sell it to them, and they'd page me like I felt like a drug dealer. They'd be like, "Hey, man, I need protein," and I'd go and I deliver protein and creatine, and then pretty soon I had a store. Right? I launched a store up there, and pretty soon like everybody on the campus used our products. We had everything like from weight loss to like proteins and creatines and all the amino acids.
Was
Um,
this a network marketing company by chance?
no, it was all from
Okay,
scratch. We sold like there's products like EAS that maybe not around anymore,
sure.
Twin Labs, just like mainstream stuff you'd find at GNC.
Right.
But a lot of it was more niche too, because that eventually is where we niched ourselves, was more of like the bodybuilding crowd, um, and um, and then we also layered in an element of consultation. So it was called one-on-one nutrition. So they would come in and they would buy products, and we'd give them like a nutritional consultation. Like, here's the food you should eat. Here's some workouts, right? If you want to build muscle, like here's what you should do. And so it was like product with consultation, which I think it was way ahead of its time,
Sure.
way back then. And we grew to 6 different stores all across Colorado. We launched one in California, as well in Northern California. And then it was about the time that the internet really started to pop, where you could like go and buy stuff from the internet. and then we had to compete with them. We launched our own online store, but we were a little late to the party, and so I had an opportunity to get bought out. I got bought out, and then started to do my own entrepreneurial stuff from there. And um,
Are you still in college at the time?
I was in yeah, I was in college. I was a sophomore when I started, and I had my store and then ownership in a store in Denver, um, starting like my junior and senior year.
Wow.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
I always wonder, entrepreneurship, is it nurture or nature? Are some people born with it, and others, you just learn it. And it's fascinating that you had two parents that had very consistent jobs. They weren't entrepreneurs, so to speak, but
Hmm.
they had an incredible work ethic. It sounds like, because they
Yep.
stuck with it for 30 plus years, and seems like you almost modeled, your work ethic after them. But you were slinging bubble gum, as a kid, and I don't think that's normal behavior for most kiddos. So what's your insight around that? Do you think entrepreneurs are born, or they're created, or is it a nature thing or nurture?
I think it's both. I mean,
Yeah,
I don't know what it was that I was exposed to that made me think that way, but there was something there that was in me that I didn't know where it came from. Like, where does a kid learn how to go buy bubble gum and sell it unless his parents are teaching it to him, right? And so I think it's probably both, right? But I think that some people have natural talents, and so if you nurture natural talent, you can definitely make it flourish more than
sure.
if you are trying to turn somebody who has no ability to do a cartwheel into like an Olympic gymnast. It's just not going to work,
Right.
right? So I think it's both.
No, that's fair. That's very fair. Well, okay, so you got started, doing the supplement business, and it sounds like you exited, or you sold it at some point. What came next?
Well, at that point, I remember I actually went back to school. So I had a bachelor's degree, and I decided, you know what? If I'm really going to do something big in business, I need to have a master's degree. So I went back to business school, and I enrolled at CU Denver, which is like, I don't know if it's a community college, but it's a city college,
Sure.
spin off of CU Boulder. And like I went through that whole process, took the GMAT, like I was in full. And then classes started in August, or yeah, August-ish. And then September 11th happened,
Mm,
right? So that was in 2001. And at the time, I was actually National Guard. So the way I paid for college is because I was in the Air Force National Guard. So 2 weeks, 1 week in a month, 2 weeks a year. My brother and I actually happened to be in the same unit, so we would volunteer to go all over the place. Whenever there was a cool deployment, we would do that. And so 9/11 happened, and suddenly we got activated. So towers are down, school's over. Like, I'm done with school. I'm active duty, and I got sent to Kosovo in Europe, and I was there for 6 months. And then I had another year and a half of active duty that I had to do. Um, and that's when I really started to dig deep into real estate. I was reading Rich Dad Poor Dad. I was listening to Carlton Sheets CDs, and I was reading books. And that's where I started to really think about real estate as an option after I was going to be released from the military.
do you remember how real estate was brought to the table at all?
I don't. I don't. I don't know where the initial seed came from, where the growth happened. I don't know,
No,
honestly.
it's fine. That's
Yeah.
funny. Well, it's not really funny, but it's understandable, because I was just thinking the other day, that yesterday, that I had always told myself I had this story of when real estate was introduced to me. But it wasn't until I really thought it through yesterday. Someone had asked me a question, and it made me kind of second guess my story. And I started thinking a little bit deeper, and I almost pinpointed when it was that real estate was brought to me. And I'd been telling this story incorrectly for years now. It was actually years prior to the start of when I was telling people. I had a small run-in with a developer, a real estate developer, when I was working at Starbucks a long, long time ago. And I forgot that's what planted the seed. It was that guy, because he just had this incredible lifestyle. And I'm working Starbucks. I had just gotten out of the Air Force at the time. And so it was after that I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. But I'd been telling my story. I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and that's what sowed the seed. It was actually, so I'm just now realizing, like, oh, that's right. That's when I got the spark. But so maybe the next time we have you on, you'll be like, dude, I remember my uncle came to me and told me.
Like, I'm thinking, like, what might have also happened during that time period? I don't know. Well, maybe. I mean, part of the curriculum in school is different kinds of business things, right? So there was a real estate class that I took. It doesn't like resonate like that was the thing
Sure,
that sparked it or not, but there's a real estate class and a management and accounting and
sure.
marketing and sales. So possibly there, but I don't know. I do remember, like, I bought the Carlton Sheets CDs, so maybe it was like a late night infomercial.
Right. Yeah.
I
More than
don't know.
likely, right?
That's
So
possible.
so you're now in the real estate world. Now, are you like a traditional agent, or are you coming in as an investor?
So when I started and I was educating, I was looking for a way to get in, knowing that I didn't have any experience. And a friend of mine was selling mortgages. So he was actually a mortgage broker, and he was making good money. And so I'm like, well, maybe I can go do that. So before I actually even got out of the military, for about 6 months, I was selling mortgages during the day and then going to the base at night and protecting F-16s.
Hey,
And that's how I got going. So I was literally just like grinding during the day, sleeping very little, except for like sometimes like I'd have like days off during the week from the base, and then I would be able to go and just crank on mortgages and then have like a normal sleeping pattern. But I was just like doing it when I could. And by the time I got out of the military, like I was good. I was solid, right? I didn't have to go and like ramp up from there. I'd been
right.
transitioning the whole time. But literally by the end of that, I started a mortgage company while I was in the military.
Huh.
Full on mortgage company, got a location downtown Cherry Creek in Denver. Like ritzy, nice ritzy area. We had this old building that was it just smelled like it was from the 60s, but it's what we could afford. But everybody around us was rich, right? And there was like these really beautiful buildings. And yeah, so I started a mortgage company within 6 months of starting to sell mortgages.
Wow, fascinating. Okay, and then when did the investment side of things come into the picture? Because I know that you've since fixed and flipped properties, and I'm sure you've got a nice portfolio of some buy hold stuff you've got. But so when did that transition take place?
It was probably within months of starting in the mortgage company, because a lot of the people that were using us were investors themselves, right? So I was watching these people go out and make a bunch of money doing real estate, either buying rentals. Somehow I got introduced to doing hard money.
Hmm,
I don't remember how. I remember the guy who I started actually doing hard money loans for, but essentially I was a broker of his too, and it was better money and it was easier money than traditional mortgages were, because we could charge points and we do like large
right.
upfront amounts. And so that became a big part of my business. And so I'm like, boy, I need to get involved in some of these deals. So I was just like telling people like, hey, listen, I won't charge you any points if you cut me in on the deal. So I was foregoing the upfront profit to get money on the
Right.
back end, and it was a way for me to get into some deals and build some
Smart.
relationships. And then that's when I started actually looking at wholesaling, and then buying rental properties, partnering with people. My business partner and I at the time, we had a decent sized portfolio of homes that were getting, because at that point in time there was considerable amount of foreclosures that were happening. And so we were out and I was buying liens. So
Right.
in Colorado, there's a redemption period. And so you can get put into the redemption process if you were to buy like a $100 HOA lien. And at that time too, there was this thing, I don't know if you guys remember, it was called 80/20s. So to avoid having to pay private mortgage insurance, you'd get an 80% first, a 20% second, and then you could avoid having to pay PMI, but now you had two liens on the property.
Hmm.
And then what would happen is these people would go into foreclosure, and there was the redemption process where the first lien was always going to get paid no matter what.
Right.
Then every subsequent lien holder at that time had an opportunity to redeem, but what that meant was they had to pay off the liens that were before them.
Right.
Yep.
So the second lien holders weren't in the business of owning real estate. So they were just basically wiping their hands off, and then 20% equity would just appear out of nowhere.
Interesting.
And then I would be back there with the $100 lien, and then I would pay the first mortgage their money, and now I have a property that has at least 20% equity
20%. Yeah.
Yep.
or more. And so we acquired a bunch of properties doing that, and it was slick. I really liked that business.
That sounds incredible, man. Well, what a fascinating journey, for like I didn't know you were in the military. That's pretty interesting. And you said F-16s. I was an F-16 crew chief. That's fun to hear.
Security forces, man.
Heck yeah.
We were all out there on the tarmac together.
That's it. Yeah. You guys were the ones that jacked us up when we didn't play by the rules and broke red and all that. You remember that term? Breaking red? Breaking red.
Oh yeah.
Tanner's like, what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't in the military, but thank you for your service, right? There you go.
Yeah, no kidding. So let's talk Privy, because I'm dying to know, when did Privy come into the picture here? Because I mean, when I learned about the tool, I'm like, oh my gosh, you guys just wait until you find out what this tool does. It's such a thing that you're just like, this is gold. This is pure gold. Like, we have this software that can give us all of this information, and it's so easy to use. And I mean, everything that you need to make a deal is right there. Like, you don't even need to take a lot of time. Like, Privy is an incredible tool. So how did this business come about?
So at some point, I had to choose whether or not I was going to be a mortgage broker or a real estate agent. There was somehow the state decided they didn't want you doing both. And at one point, I was licensed both. I was a licensed broker and I was a licensed agent. And they said, you have to choose one or the other because we believe it's a conflict of interest.
Right.
And so I chose being an agent because the commissions are higher. You got more control over, what you're working with, and you don't have to rely on some underwriter to, for your funds, or an appraiser. There was just too many checks and balances and bureaucracy on the mortgage side.
Sure.
With on the other side, it was going to be easier, and so I chose to be just do agency work. At the same time, I was looking for my own deals. So and like I said, there was a lot of foreclosures at this time, and so instead of just doing like normal work, what I did is I went around. There was all these REO brokerages, real estate owned, bank owned properties, right? And I started talking to some of these listing agents, and they were just like one person shops. And I was at a shop where I was doing really well by taking all the incoming phone calls that were coming off the signs. And, we'd have listings for like HUD, Bank of America,
Right.
Wells Fargo, Chase, and the phone would ring. And so what I would do is I would take those people, and usually the property was gone or they just didn't want it or whatever, but they were going to be my damn client, right? So I'm like, well, hey, let's go look at the house. Even if it was even though I knew it wasn't there, we're looking at that darn house. I need to meet them.
Right.
And so I put them into a CRM, and then it's my goal to go find deals. I need to find them a deal. And at the same time, at the same brokerage, it was called the Mercury Alliance. It was downtown Denver on Pennsylvania. A guy named Scott Fall, who was newer to the office, came in, and he ended up being my business partner in Privy. So we were sitting together. We had these big cubicles. You can just picture like the whole cubicle office, and we would just throw ideas back and forth. And he actually had this process that he did where he would go in and analyze a certain number of properties every single day, and he would take them and go to his people. And so the discussion happened like, how can we make this process more efficient? Because there's only so many clients that we can handle effectively without starting to drop balls, right? There was going to be a ceiling to the amount of work we could do. Now you can go hire people and you can do that. But the discussion started happening about like, well, how can we do this in a systematic way with data, right? And algorithms. And that's where Privy was born. It was like, okay, we need to figure out a way to automate the process of finding deals, running comparables, tracking markets, and it just didn't exist. So that's how it was born.
I
And
see.
and and we were the very first company, at least in Colorado, that had access to that kind of a data feed. It didn't exist then. It was before what was called it's called RETS, Real Estate Transaction Standard. It was an initiative that NAR put into place, over, what is that, 10, 12 years ago, to
Okay.
standardize data across all MLSs so that vendors like us could actually build products
I see.
that they could use. And before then, it was just really, I don't know what you call it. Like, there was no standardization between one MLS and how they organized their data, in which fields met what compared to another. And so RETS is supposed to solve that. Um, Even today, it doesn't. There's still it's still not standardized, but there people are trying.
How many MLSs are there, if that's a word?
There's over 600.
Wow.
Really?
That's something I was unaware of. I
Yeah.
thought there was one MLS, and then when I picked Florida as my market, then I realized that this MLS has a different name in Zillow than this other MLS. Like, oh, are there more than one MLS per state? And so I didn't realize there were over 600 though.
Yeah, it's crazy. It really is. And MLSs are basically based off of real estate boards, right? So there's a board, which is where the agent is part of a board, and then way back when, every board had their own MLS, and then adjacent boards would be like, hey, let's combine forces, right? We're right next door to each other. We don't even have to separate databases, and then they would grow, and then eventually they would grow into larger MLSs. But now, because the MLS model on the whole is not a great business model, it's not very profitable, especially because of all the data management and the way that you have to organize. It's expensive.
Sure.
Um, they're combining forces now, and so you see regional MLSs like Bright MLS. Bright, that's like the MLS that covers about six different states in Maryland, DC, Northern Virginia, Southern Pennsylvania, all of Delaware, Southern New Jersey, little corner of West Virginia. So they're getting smart about how they do it, and it's a benefit to everybody.
Sure.
It's still there's still hundreds and hundreds of them out there, but it's there's small little ones in the middle of nowhere that we'll likely never get, and that most people don't need because there's just not enough activity out there to make it worthwhile.
Understandable. So if I'm a brand new wholesaler or just real estate investor, probably let's stick to more wholesalers since that's our show. Um, and I heard about Privy, but I came to you and I said, Benson, what is Privy? Can you kind of fill me in on that?
Yeah, so it goes back to what we originally started Privy for, which was to and automate the process of finding and analyzing deals. And so even if you were to go, you get licensed and get access to the MLS, you still have to run comps manually. You have to go in there and you have to set these parameters, and then you have to go in there and individually, one by one, choose which ones make sense, which ones don't. Draw your zones, and look at all the other compensating factors and criteria. It could take me, even with 20 years of experience and direct access to RA Colorado, it could take me a couple hours to properly comp out one house.
Hmm.
Now, think about what the average wholesaler is who's just getting started, who has no experience or little experience. They don't have MLS data. No wonder so many people are like, don't know how to do the real estate side of the business because they probably avoid it,
Sure.
right? Because it's really hard.
Right.
And then they focus on lead generation. They're like, oh, I can lead gen. Right,
Sure.
okay, I'll figure out how to run comps once I got a lead, right? This is what people
Yep.
think.
Absolutely.
And then they get a lead and they're like, oh, I don't know what to do with it. Is this a deal? Is this not a deal? They're scrambling, right? Um, so what we do is we basically are running comps and analyzing every single property in the entire United States 24/7. It's constantly updating, pulling comparables so you can see at a glance at any moment what a property is currently worth in its unrenovated status, and then what it'll be worth after it's fixed up. The thing that makes it interesting is that most wholesalers look for deals where they live. That's just the fact of the matter.
Sure.
And it's a lot of that comes from the scenario that sorry about that. There was some background noise.
No worries.
A lot of that comes from what the gurus over the many years have been teaching people as they were indoctrinating them on many levels. But one of those things they told them is always start in your backyard. And so people still do that because it's what's right there. Like you can look across the street and see a house and be like, oh, yeah, that's a house.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And it makes sense. But the fact of the matter is that being able to look at a house with your own two eyes is not going to help you decide whether or not it's a deal or what you should be doing with it. It's the data that does that.
Yep.
And so people end up looking in their own backyard. But if that house is in an area where there's no investor activity, there's no homes that are renovated around it, then you can never prove what that house is going to be worth after repair, right? You can't determine an after repair value if there aren't renovated homes.
Absolutely.
And so earlier you mentioned like, thinking several steps down the line, right? Beginning with the end in mind. This is a thing that I teach people when they use Privy is don't just go out and look for deals based off of where you live, what's convenient, what's familiar, what's comfortable. It's where is the data present that's going to help me execute this strategy? And then go look for deals there. And by doing that one thing, it'll solve many of the problems that plague wholesalers and actually usually cause them to burn out and fail in this business is for the simple fact that they're looking in the wrong areas.
Yep.
So true.
Yeah, I don't
So
know how many
true.
deals get sent our way, and I'm like, you can't even comp this because there's literally like zero activity. I'm like, why
I've
are you even
never
trying?
heard of that city. Yeah. Like
Yeah.
what
Like, move on,
Mansfield?
please.
When I first got started as a wholesaler, one of the things you had to determine, is the market that you wanted to go. There's a lot of, things you should probably decide in the beginning of your career, but market to me was pretty important. And I did exactly what you said, Benson. I was listening to the gurus. And so I started my own backyard, and I live in Alaska. So it's a little different. And at the time it was winter. So there's snow everywhere. I couldn't see, they'd say, look for signs of distress, look for like overgrown yards and busted out windows. And like in Alaska, everything looks distressed. Like it's just pure ice and hell. And so it wasn't any fun. And then, so I'm like, man, where are the deals here? Then I learned about Privy. And so I used Privy and started looking in Alaska, and I'm like, okay, this is cool. This is great. But then I was on one of your calls and you had mentioned exactly what you said. You're like, don't be so confined. Like it really does no benefit, for you to have your market in your own backyard. 'Cause that was a belief that I had up until that point. And you shared, look, you can do this virtually. Obviously, you can do wholesaling anywhere. So pick a market based on data, not based on your location. And so it was like the light bulb went off. I'm like, oh, aha, I'm a Florida boy. So let me go look in Florida marketplace. And literally your advice and Privy are how we determined our market that we're currently in Florida. And it's like the whole world opened up. It went from having, barely any listings to having all sorts of investor activity. And I can quickly find a comp. I can quickly see what percentage investors are buying at in a specific neighborhood just using this one tool. So I find it fascinating, man. And I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about how a new wholesaler could use Privy.
Well, identifying their market where they're going to spend their time and effort and money is the first thing. Like right out of the gates, that's the important thing because most wholesalers, well, I would even venture to say 100% of them, they don't start off full time when they start, right? It's a side hustle. And so every minute they spend in their business has to be very intentional. And so if they're just doing this on nights and weekends and they're banging their head against the wall in their own backyard and they happen to be in, I don't know, Scottsbluff, Nebraska, they're eventually going to fail.
Yep.
They're going to fail, right?
So
Because there's
true.
already too many obstacles in this business that have nothing to do with which market you choose. And if you layer that behemoth of a problem right on top of everything else you have to navigate to succeed, and now you're in a crappy market, you're going to fail, right? It's
So
just a matter of
true.
how long it's going to take, how much money you're going to blow, how much money or how much time you're going to waste, how many relationships are you going to ruin before you actually figure out that you can't succeed in this. But they don't think that. They think it's which list they're pulling. Oh, is it the foreclosure list, or is it a probate list, or
Yeah.
should I do ringless voicemail or
Right.
knock on doors, or if I use
Bandit signs.
Neil versus Pace, like that's going to make
So true.
you could do all that other stuff perfectly and you're still looking for deals in Scotts Bluff, you're probably going to fail. So if you choose the right market based off of investor activity, right? And investor activity, let's explain that real quick. It isn't
Please.
just activity in general. This isn't just regular sales. These are fixed and flips. And for the wholesale world, everything is driven based off of after repair value. If you don't have fixed and flipped properties in your area, then you don't have the data to be able to assemble a deal. I call it the ingredients. It's like baking a cake, right? If you don't have sugar, you can't bake a cake, right? If you don't have eggs, you can't bake a cake. And so in areas where those ingredients are absent, like in Scottsbluff, Nebraska, you'll have something there that's just some sludge that you threw together, but it's not going to be a cake. You're not going to be able to eat it either. So you go to Tampa, where you got the sugar, which is the investor activity. You got the eggs, which is the buyers, right? And you got the other things that you need to be able to use to put that cake together and create this fluffy, interior with frosting on it and maybe some sprinkles. But people don't realize how much control they have over creating that outcome. They're
Hmm.
Yep.
really kind of just going with the flow and hoping that things come together. Where if they leverage Privy's data, they can throw themselves right smack dab in the middle of the right area and increase their chances of success significantly by making one right decision.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We do that all the time. Such a phenomenal software. Okay. So back to the new wholesaler. So now the new wholesaler is convinced Privy's the way to go, and they've got their market. Let's say they zone in on, I don't know, Orlando, Florida. They pick their market. What's something else that they can use Privy for, to be able to get that deal done?
So part of choosing that market, I guess what happens is the market research. So there is a lot of really good education that comes out of these groups that we know about, like Astro Flipping and Sub Two, and there's a lot of good groups out there. Um, and as good as they are, they can't tell you what a deal is in Orlando today
Hmm.
Yep.
versus Dallas versus Philadelphia versus Minnesota. It's always different, right? So local market intelligence, in my mind, becomes the most important education out there, above and beyond lead generation, what scripts you use, cold calling, like all those things are important. But if you don't know what a deal is, it doesn't matter how much lead generation you do, because once those leads come in, if you don't know what a successful deal looks like, then that lead is essentially useless.
So
Right.
true.
So you have to do your local market research to know what a buyer is buying at, what percentage of ARV, what price are they buying at, what are they selling, what areas are they looking in, who are those buyers, right? What's their phone number? How can you contact them? How many deals have they done? Are they a landlord? Are they a fix and flipper? Are they doing both? Who are the agents that are involved in those transactions? Like that local market research, if you use that as a foundation before you actually go out and start doing lead gen, you'll be way better prepared for when those leads come in, and then you'll know what to do with them. So you're going to get a better return on investment on however you generate leads, whether it's with direct to seller marketing or whether you're doing on market deals. Every minute that you get out of that is going to give you a better ROI, because now you can say, okay, I got a deal.
Right.
I feel comfortable with the numbers because I know over here that this house is just like the one that sold down the street. They bought it for 150, sold it for 300. I can get this one for 150 as well. The ARV is 300, because
Right.
that's what the house right down the street
Yep.
was just sold for. So we can help them align the dots, like connect all the dots. And it's almost like a beautiful mind where you just see everything kind of connecting.
Absolutely.
And most of it doesn't happen overnight. But if you practice and you look and you do this market research and you see how the comps happen, essentially like things just start to slow down.
Yep.
I kind of I'm a big football fan, and when a rookie comes out of college and they start in the NFL, and they are interviewed, they're always say like everything's just moving so fast. Like I'm thinking about the play, I'm thinking about the line, I'm thinking about what my footwork, where the running back's going to be, where my receiver is going to be,
Right.
and they make mistakes, right? Because all this is going on so quickly. But then what happens the second year and third year is that now they don't have to think about their footwork, right? Because they
Right.
practiced it, they know about it.
Yep.
They know where the running back's supposed to be. They know where they've built relationships with their receivers, so they know intuitively they're going to be 12 yards down the field over here, right? Um, and then now they can focus on the defense. Like what is the if they now they can know what the defense is, and then at that point everything just slows down, and that's how this business is too.
Great analogy.
You
Yeah.
don't have to think
Phenomenal
about
analogy.
the comping. You don't have to think about what a deal is. You don't have to think about all these little things because you've already done the research, and it just becomes intuitive at some point where you just look at a house and be like, "That's a deal."
Absolutely.
I don't need to go run comps on that. At least right now. Let's get an offer out. And if we totally screw that up because it's on a major street or it's got an ocean view and the comps the comps got an ocean view and mine doesn't, well, we can adjust up for that. But the speed is going to get them to that deal faster, get it locked up, and then they can make adjustments if they need to after the fact. But that's where you can start to separate yourself from the competition, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you can also use Privy to find buyers. Can you talk about that for just a quick minute?
Absolutely. So with every one of those properties that we show you, when you plot on the map, we have a filter at the top. It's one button, right? You don't have to go in and create like a complicated filter. You just click
Yeah.
investor activity, fix and flip. It plots on the map every single fix and flip that happened in the last 12 months that was purchased, fixed up, and sold lower than a certain percentage, right? So we've figured out what a deal looks like. And then we put them on the map for you so you can visually see where these hot areas are at. We don't just give you a spreadsheet and say, hey, figure it out. It's like you can look at it even with uneducated eyes and see, oh, that's an area I should go because it's just a big blob of investor activity, right? You can look at that and be like, okay, I'll go there. And then once you do that, then you can drill down and you can see the individual properties and you can just click one. You open it up, you see the buying, they bought it for, sold it for percentage, and then you can see who the buyer is, right? And so it's like,
Perfect.
okay, that buyer is now the person that goes on your buyer's list because you know that they just closed the deal, they're currently active. You already have a sense of what their buy box is because you're looking at a property that fits into their buy box. So you already are kind of like doing your local market research with them, and then you leverage that comparative market analysis that we've built for you to start that conversation with that buyer.
It's so
Hey,
true.
Mr. Buyer, I saw you just close that house on 1234 Main Street. I really love the way you guys did the kitchen. That waterfall granite countertop in the kitchen looks awesome. Like you guys just did a great job. I'm an investor in the area and I'm coming across a bunch of properties, and we just don't have the bandwidth for everything we come across, or we just it doesn't fit our buy box, and we're partnering up with some local investors right now to kind of take some stuff off of our plate. And I'd love to send some of that stuff your way if you're looking for deals right now. Tell me about what you're looking for, right? And so that
Boom.
conversation is just so much more smooth when you use the data than just calling and being like, hey, want to be on my buyer's list?
Absolutely. Dude, my favorite feature about Privy, I mean, there's a billion of them. But my favorite thing is the before and after.
Yeah.
I love that when you pull up a comp, you could see what it looked like before and you could see what it looked like after. And that gives such good ammunition when you are calling those buyers to say, man, I mean, the fact that you guys turned that backyard into an oasis is incredible. What it used to look like versus what it looks like now, man. I mean, it used to be beat up and now you guys have all these things are things, buyers love hearing because they're like, yeah, that was me. I did all that. And it's just an incredible resource to be able to do that. So, and thank you. My hat's off to you guys at Privy. And I know we're coming up on our time. And so I wanted to I don't want to ask you too many more questions. I really just want to know, how can people, get access to Privy? Is it month to month? Do you have to commit to it? Is it incredibly expensive? Do you need to get a whole bunch of other softwares, or
Yeah,
what's the deal?
no, it's a good question. Actually, there's one last thing I want to mention
Sure.
before we get to that, and there's a process where we take people through it, and kind of like going from the market research to knowing who the people are, the players. We actually have a patent pending on this final piece here, which I think is really the game changer, which is we have a button that says find similar active deals. It's a big green button. It's right at the top. You don't have to create some complicated filter. You click that one button, and it takes all of those closed deals that we just looked at, that we use to do our market research and get familiar with what the local market realities are. Like what percentage they're actually buying at, so we don't have to use the 70% MAO formula and miss out on deals or get into a deal we shouldn't be in. And you click that one button, and Privy takes all of those, and it reverse engineers deals that are available right there and then that you can write offers on.
Mm.
And if you've done your market research and you learned that these buyers will buy at 60% of the ARV in this area, and the filter that in that search says, show me every property that I can buy today, is 55% of the ARV or lower. Well, now that search is just basically just plucking out like diamonds in the rough.
Yes.
Stuff that
Yep.
you would have to maybe run on. Say there's 100 properties on the market tomorrow. You'd have to run comps on 100 properties to find the 5 that are good. Well, guess what? You just spent 95% of your time running comps on properties that you were going to say no to.
So true.
So we get rid of the 95. We show you the 5 that have the data, the fix and flips that prove that those things are lower than 55% of the ARV, and then we serve them to you on a silver platter in that comparative market analysis format with all the flipped comps. And you'd be like, oh my God, the house right across the street was just fixed and flipped and sold for this much. That's my ARV. All I have to do is write an offer at this price, and I got myself a deal.
It's such an incredible tool, you guys.
It really is.
For real, it's amazing. I mean, to be able to type in a zip code, type in whatever, go straight to that area, dial in your ARV based on what people are buying in the area, click on flips, and just boom, immediately have a list of already vetted properties. I mean, they're all right there. You can even see the agent who's listing it, to where you just click it and you can find their number really quickly and call them and make your offer. I mean, it's the tool is just phenomenal. And so this was kind of why I was a little hesitant to release it out to the world, but I figure, Jamil's out there getting loud with it, and everyone is learning about Privy, so we might as well just put people on game and get it going. So Benson, thank you so much for your time, for coming on the show and filling us in on this. I do want everyone to know they can go to gotprivy.com to that's our specific our affiliate URL. So we are, just to be 100% transparent, we recently became affiliates with Privy because we knew it was such a powerful resource. We're like, gosh, how can we get more people involved in this thing? How can we attach ourselves to this amazing brand and this amazing company? So gotprivy.com is where you guys can go to get Privy. And before we go, Benson, is there anything else you wanted to let the good people of Wholesale Elite know?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I wish I was more consistent, but I'm getting better at doing some social stuff. So I'm putting some stuff on TikTok. I'm doing some stuff on Instagram. Those two specifically because they're linked, and then I only have to do one post. I'm lazy like that. And then we've got an
You're
amazing
efficient, the right word.
YouTube channel too, where we put a bunch of training and education. We do a lot of live deal finding sessions where we go and we just find deals live, and as a way of just kind of showing people how to use the tool. But Privy, I mean, it's less than $100 a month for all of what we do, and I know that we've got users who are literally making tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars in like 5 or 6 months of just assignment fees, deals they're finding from our system. Disclaimer, those results aren't likely, but it shows you that it's entirely possible. Like
Yep.
we all know the people we're talking about, right? The people
Yep.
that are in our
Absolutely.
communities that are out there just killing it. And they're not doing anything special. Like they'll tell you. I just did a call too with my mood. He's like, I'm not doing anything special. I'm just using the tool every single day and I'm taking action.
That's it.
And him and John, they closed like 10 deals in the last 5 weeks.
Oh yeah, they're crushing it. They are crushing. Yeah, we were just talking to Mahmood yesterday, and he was mentioning Privy and how it's been working for him, and that's one of the more integral parts of their system. So, dude, thank you so much. And one other thing, you know, Privy, like Benson alluded to it earlier, it does take some time to learn, but the software is very intuitive. It's the UI and the UX is incredible. You can get on there and get started right away. But the more you dig in, it's just the more you realize, oh my God, the power of this software. And so, Benson, again, sir, thank you so much for your time. It's been
thanks, guys.
Yeah, you're a rock star, man.
It's been a great honor. It's cool to
Tanner, Isham. I always want to say Isham.
It's all good.
Thank you so much for having me. This is a ball, guys. I appreciate just coming on board, and I'm looking forward to working with you guys. I know we'll do some business together.
Absolutely.
Outside of Privy, it's been a lot of fun.
Heck yeah. Awesome. Well, brother, thank you again. And guys, got Privy, right? The question mark, gotprivy.com. Go there and get started and join the revolution, and you're welcome. So with that being said, guys, we'll catch you on the next episode. Take care. Peace.
Awesome.
What up, Elite fan? That's a wrap for today's episode. But look, if you got value out of the show today, do us a huge favor and give us a review or give us a like or subscribe. Do all the things to help us get the word out there. And look, we want to see you on the next show. So get out there and crush it, make it happen. Stay tuned for the next episode. Peace.